Fellowship of the Broken, Making Sense of 12-Step Recovery by Angelo. Chapter 5. The Unified Field. Quote, "Out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other do not make any sense." Close quote. And that's by Rumi. I doubt very much that Rumi had a scientific understanding of unified field theory when he wrote these words in the 13th century. However, I do find the use of the word field to link medieval mystical wisdom with modern science rather appealing. Unified field theory, a term coined by Einstein and now also known as the theory of everything, is an all-encompassing theoretical framework of physics that seeks to explain all physical aspects of the universe. The basic concept is that there is a unified field that is the ultimate source of all creation. The idea is to reconcile the theory of general relativity, which relates to the force of gravity at the macro level, with quantum field theory that models the three non-gravitational forces of weak interaction, strong interaction, and electromagnetism that govern at the micro level, including atomic and subatomic particles. The relentless pursuit by modern science to understand the physical world has given rise to many related theories and avenues of research. String theory suggests that the four fundamental forces of gravity, weak, strong, and electromagnetic were a single overarching force at the moment of the Big Bang. It also suggests that all tiny subatomic particles in the universe are vibrations of energy, or conceptual strings, with differing oscillating patterns giving rise to particles of varying mass and force charge. Superstring theories have been developed that try to model all of the particles and fundamental forces of nature. And M theory is an 11-dimensional framework that unifies the 5 versions of superstring theory that in turn introduce the concept of additional dimensions to the geometry of 4-dimensional space-time. We're trying to think about the 3 dimensions of physical space plus the dimension of time is very challenging. The theoretical existence of additional dimensions opens the door to incredible possibilities beyond imagination, including multiple universes. The speed of progress and the complexity of the theories are truly mind-boggling, and every step forward seems to lead to more possibilities. The assumption, presumably, is that we are getting closer to the final ultimate understanding, but it could be that we are simply scratching the surface. Despite the impressive ingenuity of mankind, the truth is we still do not fully know how it all works, and perhaps we never will. What's most interesting for me is that the science of physics is working relentlessly to break down physical reality into its component parts, all of which increasingly appear to be arising from a single source. As Nikola Tesla suggested, if we want to find the secrets of the universe, we should be thinking in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. This energy, or common source, or unified field, is the basic principle underpinning all genres of spirituality. Science and spirituality are converging at a rapid pace, and indeed, ironically, science is effectively catching up with what the spiritual gurus and mystics have been pointing to for thousands of years. Unwilling to believe in a single source, the self-important ego of modern mankind has been determined to try to figure it all out for itself. It increasingly seems that we will most probably end up concluding that ancient spiritual wisdom was, and is, far closer to the truth than previously envisaged. The plethora of scientific research into the transformative power of meditation is just one example of this trend. It is difficult to envisage that physical matter can emerge from a common source of nothingness, yet this is the inescapable conclusion that science has reached. Complex physics and mathematics have proven that the space of a vacuum at any volume is infinitely dense and contains infinite energy and mass. A simple explanation would be that waves of any frequency or wavelength ultimately equate to nothing, because the peaks and troughs cancel themselves out and hence add to zero. This implies that empty space at any volume has infinite potential, because there are infinite possibilities for vibrations of infinite frequency and wavelength to occur. The question remains as to whether such vibrations occur randomly, or if there is some underlying creative intelligence. Returning again to our binary analogy, it would likely take many years of research and the evolution of numerous theories to gradually break down all of the applications into the various user interfaces, programming languages, operating systems, data storage mediums, communication protocols, and machine code. Gradually, as each layer became understood, the scientists would go down to the next level, and so on, until they reached binary code. Even then they would need to comprehend electricity as the power source that underpins all of it. Impressed with their discoveries, the scientists would surely have to conclude that some conscious creative intelligence must have been behind all of this brilliance. It would be inconceivable to think that such complexity, functionality, interactivity and usefulness could possibly have emerged randomly from the basic binary options of 0 or 1. The probability of such an outcome will be so imperceptibly small that the existence of creative intelligence would surely be the only possible conclusion. In his book published in 2009 called God's Undertaker, Has Science Buried God?, the author, John C. Lennox, brilliantly examines many facets of science in order to assess the probability of life emerging randomly out of nothing. The arguments are comprehensive and exhaustively cross-referenced. The resulting complex calculations indicate the probability of a random emergence of life in the universe to be so infinitesimally minute that it has to be dismissed as impossible. The evolution of science has therefore paradoxically proved that there effectively must be a creative intelligence at play. We are at liberty to decide for ourselves, but for me there can be no doubt. If any reservations persist for you, then I can only recommend obtaining a copy of his book. It is a fascinating read. So, science is telling us that the single source of the material world is empty space, or nothingness, and that such nothingness at any volume contains infinite potential. Science is also clearly indicating that there is creative intelligence in this void, which therefore must also exist in any volume of space. This simple idea of conscious, intelligent nothingness existing at all scales is termed consciousness, and is itself increasingly becoming the subject of scientific research. If you type "the science of consciousness" into Google, you will be amazed by how much is going on. Well, consciousness is also the foundational concept of all spiritual traditions and practices. The implication here is not that the underlying intelligence has created something separate from itself. It has created something out of itself. It is the source of creation, the cause of creation, the content of creation, and exists both inside and outside of every particle and wave in the entire universe. It is both macro and micro, and the same intelligence pervades at all levels. It is beyond description in words of any language, because it exists prior to language. It is beyond understanding by a human mind, because it exists prior to the creation of humankind. It is the source of everything, the origin of life itself, absolute truth, and yet utterly simple. This simplicity is crucial to grasp. Just as the entire digital world ultimately depends on and derives from binary code, so our entire physical universe depends on and derives from the source. In the digital world, the layers of complexity build one on top of the other, so that the top level seems to operate entirely independently. The user application is unaware of the binary code that gives rise to its existence, but simply operates in accordance with the functionality programmed in at the level immediately below. In the material world, the layers are so numerous that the innumerable outer expressions in terms of organic and inorganic matter are unaware of the very thing that makes it all possible. This lack of awareness is the root cause of our misunderstanding. We think that we are separate from each other and separate from the world around us, but actually we are all made from and derived from the same nothingness. The layers seem to separate us from the source, but each layer builds upon and comprises the layer below, so actually the source is present at all levels. It's right here, right now. We're simply unaware, or, to put it another way, we are all asleep in the illusion of perceived reality. Our experiences seem to continually reinforce this belief. It seems that this is necessary to some extent in order for us to experience being alive and present in the world, but perhaps we've given this too much importance. The opportunity is to wake up to the true reality and experience this life from a deeper level of consciousness, and hence in a very different and harmonious way. It's very tempting to think that this explanation is too simple. It implies that all of our problems are arising from a simple case of mistaken identity. We think we are one thing, but actually we are far more than we think. It was Einstein who suggested that, quote, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough," close quote. He also said that, quote, "The definition of genius is taking the complex and making it simple," close quote. I certainly do not claim to be a genius, or to have complete understanding, but my extensive research and personal experience point clearly to the simple explanation that I have outlined. The implications of this common source are profound. As well as existing as apparently separate beings with limited intellect and capability, we are, at the same time, temporary manifestations of the infinite, eternal source. This vast consciousness is ever present, both within and without. We are separate beings and simultaneously part of everything that is. It always was a unified field, but it now seems to be incomprehensibly diverse, yet in truth it remains as unity and always will. It is perhaps too much to believe, yet one could say that our very existence is evidence of an ultimate source. Rumi certainly seemed to know who he was. Reviewing his quote again, it's clear that he is referring to the unified field, or the source, which exists prior to any ideas of right or wrong. In that place, or state, the world is beyond the ability of language to describe. Ideas don't make any sense, including the idea that we are separate from each other. Well, that sounds like a very appealing place to meet, and we don't have to physically go anywhere to get there. This field exists within us, and in truth is who we really are. I do not believe that Rumi was any more of a special human being than any of us. Indeed, the same could be said for all of the spiritual gurus and mystics of the past and present. It's only a question of the level of consciousness from which our experience arises. Although the term unified field relates to scientific theory, it can also be seen to have a wider application. The idea of consciousness is actually unifying the fields of philosophy, spirituality, and science. These fields have previously offered different and competing views, yet it's becoming clear that they are now converging to provide a single unified perspective. The disciplines and terminology may differ, but the conclusions being reached are the same. It's no longer valid to suggest that spirituality is unscientific. There's far more wisdom in deep spiritual understanding than there is in scientific theory. Indeed, consciousness already knows all that science is trying to understand. Science is pushing back the limits of our current misunderstanding. This is all very helpful and interesting, but we don't need to rely on science in order to validate the wisdom that originates in consciousness. We can actually unify with it ourselves. The unified field is not elsewhere. It's right here. We are in it. We are it. The unified field is consciousness.